Hey kids, today's show is brought to you by the letter 4 and the number potato! I'm a stupid private.
Welcome, YouTube dweller, to my retrospective of the Dark Kingdom arc of Sailor Moon.
Oh, come on.
Will
I can't
this
believe we're doing
nonsense
this.
never end? I have real work to be getting on with.
Don't mind them. Okay, this is how it's gonna work. I'm starting with a general overview of the show. Next, I'm moving on to the characters, then a broad strokes breakdown of the plot, and I'm going to end with my final thoughts.
Fine, let's do this thing.
Alright, couple of ground rules. This video is about the American version of Sailor Moon. And yes, anime purists, I'm aware I speak the most horrid of blasphemies when I say I don't like looking at the bottom third of the screen the entire episode. And yes, I'm also aware that the American localization team did to Sailor Moon what Jason Voorhees does to necking teenagers. But, if it helps, try and think of it as an adaptation. Okay? Okay. 1,000 years ago, the moon was not an airless, meteor-scarred rock, but a magical kingdom of peace and happy-clappy, ruled by the benevolent Queen Serenity the Prematurely Grey. And just like every fantasy kingdom, it's located right across the street,
Cosmically speaking,
from some colossal tool hell-bent on ruining everyone's good time. And this one's name is Queen Beryl. And before you can say elements of harmony, the good people of the moon...
My name is Cliff, and that's not a bill. Tell him,
That's a bill.
A bill? Why are we trying to cash a bill,
I said the good people of the moon are up to their eyeballs in Negaverse shock troops. So the Queen, the good one that is, uses a plot-convenient doodad called the Silver Millennium Crystal to send her subjects and the enemies into the future,
Where Aku's evil is law.
if only.
before promptly dropping dead. The series proper follows Queen Serenity's daughter, Princess Serena,
Puns ahoy.
as she battles the dark forces of the Negaverse as Sailor Moon, along with 4 other planetary princesses, the Sailor Scouts. The setting of the majority of the episodes is mid-90s Tokyo, which due to some Jason-esque editing, recuts, redubs, and touch-ups, and the show's own aesthetic choices, has come to resemble a fascinating hybrid of Japanese and American cosmopolitan living. The way I would describe the show is it's a lot like its main character. Silly, clumsy, and sort of dumb, but still endearing and fun, with one stroke of brilliance that had to be an accident. Sailor Moon is basically a Monster of the Week style superhero show, with 2/3 of an episode devoted to exposition, screwball comedy, evil plotting, and moping pathetically over boys. The other 1/3 is an amusing amalgam of dorky monsters, special moves, Power Rangers posing, and cheesy proclamations about truth and justice, with the odd one-liner thrown in for flavoring. All of this is brought to you with the magic of repeating the same scene over and over again. Now let's discuss the players in this game of Space Thrones, starting with the meatball head herself, Sailor Moon. And oh boy, exactly the way the medieval villagers felt about Ash in Army of Darkness, the Sailor Scouts feel about her. They just can't believe they're stuck with this lazy, dim, whiny crybaby. But somehow Serena's hard to hate. Her bouts of klutziness are more often than not played for laughs rather than a genuine barrier to success. And really, she cares about the other Sailor Scouts, Tuxedo Mask, her friends, and the people of Tokyo. She's your archetypal everyman, or in this case girl, who is suddenly revealed to have an epic destiny, similar to one Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter, but I somehow can't shake the suspicion that Sailor Moon might just be the worst superhero ever. Think about it. To go into battle, she needs the help of 4 girls in identical outfits, another male superhero, and a talking animal sidekick. It's like someone made the comedy relief character the main hero. If I sound ambivalent, it's because I am. Lot of peaks and valleys with Sailor Moon. As far as her powers go, her main weapon is her tiara, which she throws Oddjob style. And later on, she gets that moon crescent wand thing that heals corrupted humans. And that about does it for Sailor Moon. But as far as I'm concerned, there's only one moon princess, and it ain't her. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Now on to Sailor Mercury. Mercury is tied with Jupiter in first place as my favorite Sailor Scout. Amy is the adorkable nerdette of the team. She's also the strategist, and keeps the Sailor Scouts focused on the mission. Book learning and common sense are a powerful combination.
Maybe she only looks smart because she's standing next to Serena.
Amy's a shy girl, but she does have a prospective suitor in Greg, who's the reincarnation of a bad Negaverse super soldier.
This won't end well.
Mercury's main role on the team is tech support. She's got a little netbook and Google glasses. Okay, it's jack squat now, but at the time James Bond would have been like, damn. As far as powers go, Mercury is ice or water themed. Weird because Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. But whatever. Amy's not built for combat and almost always works in a support role. Her bubble power,
Bubbles, I'm sure the Negaverse is terrified.
is used to create concealment for the scouts, and her tech support skills help in planning and targeting. All in all, a great supporting character, on and off the battlefield. Up next, it's the Martian princess, Ray. Sailor Mars is the pyro of the group, and not just in terms of her powers. Mars is by far the most confrontational of the team, which is sort of strange considering she's a Mako, hope I'm saying that right, temple priestess.
Inner peace. What a load.
This fact also makes Ray the go-to gal on the team for all things supernatural. She can sense the presence of evil, as well as use those nifty scroll things. I would also say that Mars is one of the frontline fighters of the team, being an accomplished martial artist. Personality-wise, there's not really a nice way to say this. Ray is basically the Starscream of the group, always plotting to replace Sailor Moon as the leader, but by the end of the season, she turns around. John Carter would be pleased. Now it's time for my other favorite scout, Sailor Jupiter. She's the biggest and the strongest of the scouts, packing a wallop like Thor's hammer. When combined with her martial arts experience, this makes Jupiter basically the tank of the group, dishing out the damage to any Negaverse soldiers unlucky enough to end up in her crosshairs. Personality-wise, Lead is a firebrand, quick to get mad, but just as quick to make up afterward. Unlike Ray, who would hold it against you. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most of the time, Lita gets along pretty well with the other scouts. But she does have this weird habit of comparing every other guy she meets to her old boyfriend.
Both manic depressive and obsessive and clingy.
And if she weren't already awesome enough, she's named after Lita Ford.
You don't know that.
It's what I choose to believe.
And that's why I analyze global mass communications and you fix the toaster.
Let's move on from the Princess of Thunder,
Words I didn't think went together.
and on to the Princess of Love. I find Sailor Venus to be a bit of an enigma. If I had to describe her in one word, it would be loyalty. She doesn't seem to have any goals or ambitions or hell, even interests, outside of the Scouts. This is partially due to the fact that she was the last sailor to join the team in Season 1, and also the fact that her one episode of character development got dragged off into the darkness by the editor and was never heard from again. I'm sure she gets fleshed out more as the series progresses, but for now, she just kind of fades into the background. Which is strange because she has the most experience fighting the Negaverse and is the most independent, having fought them for months before the show started as Sailor V. Powers-wise, Venus doesn't really stand out from Jupiter and Mars much, except she focuses her power into one tight beam, so I think of her as the sharpshooter of the group. From Venus, let's move on to the animal sidekicks, Artemis and Luna. First off, I love Luna's voice. She's basically a cute version of Professor McGonagall, permanently stuck in cat form. Luna is the mentor of the Sailor Scouts. She gives out the missions and the important plot points. Luna is also the straight man, cat, to Serena. This is an important job that mostly involves hyperventilating over Sailor Moon's bull. The other cat/mentor is Artemis, who spends most of his time with Sailor Venus, and giving instructions to Luna through some kind of voice transformer.
Pay no attention to that cat behind the curtain.
Like everything associated with Sailor Venus, he's pretty undeveloped. And I can't figure out what his voice actor is trying to do. It sounds like he's trying to do either a John Wayne or a Johnny Cash. And seriously, he should have just gone all the way with that. Well, alrighty, Scouts, we got trouble. So it's time to saddle up. How awesome would that have been? That basically does it for the Moon people.
Let us leave this primitive rock because there's nothing but cavemen here.
Yeah, goodbye, caveman. Freaking nerds.
Nerds! I hope you can see this because I'm doing it as hard as I can.
So here comes our leading man, the dashing Tuxedo Mask. Real name Darian. He's basically what would happen if Bruce Wayne's parents were Baroque opera singers and were murdered by Power Ranger villains. Basically, his job is to swing in at plot-convenient moments and save the Sailor Scouts. He doesn't seem to have any superpowers, but he's like Bullseye with cut flowers. He even has a nifty transformation sequence, just like the girls. Now, if you'll remember back to a few minutes ago, I said this show has one moment of brilliance. It does the gender-swapped damsel in distress better than anything I've ever seen. By having Darian turn evil instead of just being kidnapped, he essentially becomes an obstacle in his own rescue. And when he's finally released from his mental enslavement, it's not by an act of force, but by a gesture of love.
Brilliant! Brilliant!
Not that he was a particularly good villain. His MO doesn't really change, he's just a bigger jerk about it. He still swings in right at the most convenient moment and saves the Sailor Scouts from whatever monster, and then he's all, Sailor Scouts, give me the Silver Millennium Crystal. And they're like, no, get lost, creepwad, and he's like, curses, foiled again, but I'll be back. But when you're basically the Phantom of the Opera without the unpleasant facial scarring, you can still be a jerk and get the girl at the end. Ph, what does this guy have that I don't have?
A stylish wardrobe.
Coordination.
Dashing good looks.
He doesn't smell like B.O. and cheeseburgers.
Fine, but I have one thing he doesn't.
What?
An open carry permit.
Private, I'm proud of you.
Gee, thanks, Sergeant.
Private, don't ruin the moment.
And that about does it for the good guys. Now on to the villains. I'll be starting at the top of the Dark Kingdom hierarchy and moving my way down. First off, Queen Metalia. I prefer to refer to her as the Negaforce because, honestly, she's basically something Skeletor farted out. Evil, manipulative, judgmental, not tolerant of failure. Pal, play the song.
And it's so easy when you're evil. This is the life you see. The devil tips his hat to me.
On the next rung down the Negaverse power ladder, you'll find Queen Beryl, who is pretty much your standard Wicked Witch. She has an army of minions and a hit out on all goodness and light throughout the solar system. Pretty standard stuff, except for brainwashing Sailor Moon's Prince Charming and sending him to kill her. Eat your heart out, every other homicidal matriarch character in the fantasy genre. Now for the lieutenants. Malachite wins the Golden Greedo Award for Best Henchman. He's the strongest of the 4 Negaverse commanders. Most of his plans center around finding Sailor Moon and getting the Silver Millennium Crystal. Some are actually sort of clever, like making girls throw a frisbee in order to get into a fancy-pantsy finishing school, on the rationale that Sailor Moon's tiara turns into a frisbee when she throws it. He's also the only henchman to be taken out by the Scouts directly, but that has to do more with his own powers backfiring than anything the Scouts did. The next henchman, or henchwoman in this case, is Zoisite.
My, what a flat chest and broad shoulders she has.
Adaptation, remember? Zoe is probably my least favorite. She spends most of her time tracking down these things called rainbow crystals.
Giving that Jezebel Rainbow Bright some competition, huh?
Which are trapped inside people who used to be bad Negaverse super monsters. She's more successful than Beryl's other henchmen, but I think that has to do more with her job being easier. Personality-wise, Zoisite basically has all Starscream's problems with none of his redeeming qualities.
Starscream and redeeming qualities in the same sentence. How unusual.
A lot of whining and crying to Malachite when things go bad and arrogant gloating at all others. Malachite is definitely way too good for her. Now on to my personal favorite henchman, Nephlite. This dude is awesome. His evil plan is to steal energy from humans at the moment of peak efficiency. He uses this nifty star chart to help him find victims that he keeps at his palatial mansion. After he locates the unwitting dupe, he wins their trust and then turns them evil by subtly infecting some cherished personal object with his evil energies. He also scores a pretty rare win against the Sailor Scouts by defeating Sailor Moon. Nephlite also has the best friggin' disguise. Maxfield Stanton, millionaire tennis instructor. There is one kinda creepy thing about him though. He, starts dating a 14-year-old girl.
Shall I summon Chris Hansen?
Hold up on that. In the Japanese version, the Dark Kingdom fighters were reincarnated, just like the Sailor Scouts. So that makes Nephlite about 19 years old, the same age as Darien.
Adaptation, remember?
Yeah, you should probably go ahead and call Chris Hansen.
With zeal.
Lastly, there's poor Jedi. His energy harvesting scheme involves sucking the life out of large numbers of people at once. Not the most subtle plan, but since when is a villain's evil scheme supposed to be? I actually kind of feel bad for the poor guy. He's out there every day busting his hump trying to collect energy for the Negaverse, and the Scouts always show up to put the kibosh on it. But the scheme always kinda works, and he's at least getting some energy for the Negaverse, and he still gets frozen in carbonite forever by Queen Beryl.
That's what happens when you can't kill 3 teenage girls. I mean, how hard is that?
Alright, the last henchman is Prince Darien. He sort of has a rivalry going on with Malachite, which is kinda like Carmine having a rivalry with Marcus Phoenix. I've basically said everything about this guy that needs to be said. I mean, he's not really the most stunningly competent villain in the world. Alright, that about does it for the bad guys. Now let's move on to the supporting cast. Starting with Serena's best friend and Nephlite's main squeeze, Molly. Man, does Molly get treated like... Something bad is always happening to her or her family. They're getting kidnapped, or the energy sucked out of them, or some crap. Still, gotta love that New York accent. Then there's nerd boy extraordinaire, Melvin.
Now there's a kid who knows what the inside of a locker smells like.
Well summarized, Sergeant. Now on to Serena's family. Mom, kinda schizophrenic, June Cleaver 1 minute, then turns into the chick from Misery the next. Little brother, makes his sister's life suck. Well done, sir. Dad, friggin' awesome. Watch this clip.
What's with that locket? Did some boy give it to you, Serena?
Yeah, you could say that.
What? Really?
How can you not love this guy? Lastly, there's Greg, a psychic who uses his powers to impress girls by getting good grades.
Greg, my man, you know what else really impresses the ladies? 5-time lotto winners.
And that is it for the characters. Tune in next time for part 2 of my Sailor Moon Dark Kingdom arc retrospective. I'm the Stupid Private. Thank you for watching.
Hello, Carl. I am Ignignoct, and this is
I am
We are Moonanites from the inner core of the moon.
You said it right.
Our race is hundreds of years beyond yours.
Man, do you hear what he's saying?
Some would say that the Earth is our moon.
We're the moon.
But that would belittle the name of our moon, which is the moon.
Point is, we're at the center, not you.